Well, I'm here today in the bar at Moor with Lewis Hetherington, who is the adapter of next week's play here at Moor. I say adapter because Lewis is a writer in his own right, but indeed we did his first play here, Sea Change.
Yes.
Yeah, and Perfect Child last year, but he's taken on a new role adapting one of our Latin American plays. Lewis, it's lovely to have you here.
Yes, it's lovely to be here again. Yeah, it's always nice.
Tell me a little bit about next week's work.
Okay, so it's two short plays, two short Argentinian plays, one called Instructions for Butterfly Collectors and one called The Archivist. They're both born out of a theatre movement in Argentina called Theatre Identity, which is linked in to do with children who were taken during the Dirty War, during the military dictatorship in Argentina in 76 to 83. And so they're very politically charged work, but I suppose really they're very personal, because they're about the absolute intersection of kind of personal and political, because children were removed from their families for political reasons, but obviously when you start tearing a family apart, that's going to kind of leave a scar across generations and generations and inflict kind of real just distress and loss on people's lives. But that said, the plays aren't, what I kind of really admire about them is they're full of passion and they're full of spirit and they're full of hope and joy, even in what is essentially darkly personal and political situations. They've kind of got this beautiful lyricism and energy to them, which really attracted me to them when I was given them to adapt.
I quite agree with you. I mean, I think what's most extraordinary about them is that they are deeply personal and deeply political, and there's no join between the two. It's very touching, and I think one of the reasons that I'm so pleased that we're doing the play is there's a lot of people in recent years have gone, oh, political theatre, as if it's some kind of crude, blunt instrument. But this seems to me an example of a political theatre which is very rich.
I think so, because it's born out of a situation where people, they couldn't possibly avoid that. Anyone who lived through that period, through that military dictatorship in Argentina, could not help but have their daily lives hugely kind of affected and impacted on by the political situation. And it's a good reminder that actually we all live under a government, however problematic they are. We all kind of exist within a political sphere, and it makes us realise how lucky we've been, but also kind of, you know, looking at these plays and looking at how fired up these characters get about the situations they're born into, it does make you start to reflect on our own country and reflect on, and I suppose especially with you know, the riots and protests that have been going on in Britain, you start to go, actually maybe we're reaching a time again where we do start to reach out and demand things and at least have our voice heard, because I think that's a lot what these plays are about. They're not necessarily about retribution or calling people to justice. They're about just people going, I want someone to bear witness to my story, and I want someone to bear witness to this thing that's happened to me, and my voice is valid. Because I think that's, you know, one of the things is about these characters that are coming to terms with something that, you know, essentially the dictatorship ended in 1983. And obviously now we're in 2011, but still people who were potentially taken as a baby in 81, and maybe they're only just finding out now that actually the family they've been brought up with their whole lives are not their real family, and they're kind of just waking up into a new reality and having to make sense of it.
I'm very interested that you then went on to say it made you think about the processes that are going on now. Last night I was watching the news and there was a young woman being interviewed in Cairo, and she drew the same parallel with the student protest movement in this country. So there is a sort of growing sense, I think, of internationalism, and in the play we're doing this week, which is the first of the Latin American plays, I was delighted that the audience here seemed to engage with the play in a way that was very direct.
That's the thing, I think partly because the plays I've adapted are so personal. It does feel like, I mean, they're such human stories, and as I say, they're about people wanting their voice heard, and I think that's a really human concern that everyone can understand and everyone can appreciate. And that was always one of my real goals with these adaptations, was to make them so they felt really alive for this audience, but whilst kind of keeping the heart of them very much alive.
Yes. Difficult job adaptation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you feel yourself slightly looking over your shoulder at the writer, or are you comfortable?
Yeah, it's a curious mix. I think you need to sort of do both at the same time. You sort of need to be incredibly reverential and really respectful, and especially because these writers are alive, they're in Argentina now, these plays are very contemporary, I really think it's important to have an awareness of that and respect their work. But on the other hand, you also at points need to sort of forget about that and allow yourself to just explode. And I worked in two different ways. Sometimes I'd be there with the literal translation, going through, letter by letter, kind of investigating it. And other times I'd sort of chuck that to one side and I try and just write freely and just try and write. Because I got such a strong feeling from the plays, I try and... Because you want to capture the spirit, rather, because that's the thing, because, I didn't speak Spanish, so I just had a literal translation.
Yes.
But the reason you don't do that is because there's something of the spirit and the fire that gets lost that I could see was there, and I kind of felt that's my job as the adapter, really, to try and rediscover and really kind of crystallise that poetry and energy that is there, but that's got slightly lost in
suggested in the text.
Exactly, that you can see the writers. You can see that's the soul of it.
Yes.
And it's just about kind of peeling back the literal translation to rediscover that kind of fiery heart.
Good. Well, looking forward to it.
Yes, as am I.
I think we're going to see a run soon. What about the future? What other things have you got on the go?
Well, this is quite an exciting year because I'm part of a company called Analog, and we are making our third kind of big show this year, but we're making it in Germany, which is quite exciting. For many reasons. Obviously, it'll be really exciting to work in a different country. It's really exciting to be part of an international co-production, and also it's kind of nice because this year somehow is becoming my international year quite accidentally, which is nice. And the show's called 2,401 Objects, and it's about it's quite a complicated show, but it's essentially about a man who is one of the most important case studies in neurological science ever, and his brain has been dissected into thin slices, 2,401 thin slices, which is where the name of the show comes from. And we're just kind of interested in the fact that this may unlock kind of untold mysteries about the brain that we don't know. And through his life when he was alive, because of certain kind of head trauma that he revealed huge sequence about how we understand memory, and basically potentially this brain is being dissected now in San Diego. It's being worked on, and we're working with the neuroanatomist who's dissecting it to kind of try and create a theatre piece, basically responding to really contemporary scientific technology, which is really exciting.
Your last play here, Perfect Child, was founded in a scientific ability, if you like, to create a child for an infertile couple. And you find yourself drawn to contemporary scientific moral questions?
Yeah, I suppose it really excites me because it feels really contemporary, and it's something that I like, kind of a hypothetically possible scientific future. Kind of, I think science fiction is oftentimes, and I think particularly we're used to films as being very grand and spaceships and all the rest of it, but I'm interested in those kind of ethical questions that are raised, and I'm interested because obviously we live our lives relying on so much kind of scientific technology that at one time was maybe viewed as problematic or controversial or unethical, and we've accepted lots of those things, and I'm kind of interested to see where we go and to try to not place judgment. Really, that's what I wanted to do with Perfect Child, to actually again find the human story in a couple who were genetically engineering their perfect child. And I really didn't want to judge them, I didn't want to problematise them. I wanted to just try and go, what could the potential emotional truth of that hypothetical scientific scenario be? And again, I think that's hopefully why audiences responded to that show, because
you were raising questions that they weren't likely to be asked in their lifetime.
Yes, absolutely. And then trying to bring them back to very normal dilemmas about what you do if your child is being difficult, or what you do if you feel like you don't love your child, which actually are kind of very primal desires, but putting them through, as you say, a filter, which is quite unusual in terms of this is a child that's been kind of modified to your exact specification. So if you don't like it, what does that mean for you? So I think that kind of using contemporary science as a prism for dramatic action is something that really appeals to me.
Good. Well, I really would encourage you to come next week to see these 2 short plays from Buenos Aires, which Liz has adapted for us. They're compelling and moving, and I think it'll be a great experience. Thank you, Lewis.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for talking to us.
Cheers.